If you took out a loan today and charged your friend interest on it, it is not a good practice. But for over 1,500 years, in almost every major civilization on earth, that same act could get you excommunicated, exiled, or even executed. Not fined, not embarrassed, executed. We're talking about interest. The thing your credit card charges you every single month without a second thought. And I'm about to show you why the entire ancient and medieval world looked at that practice and called it a sin. Here's what nobody tells you in school: Christianity banned it, Judaism banned it, at least among their own people, Islam banned it. Even ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle argued against it. Different religions, different continents, different centuries, and yet they all landed on the exact same rule: don't charge interest on a loan. That's not a coincidence, that's a pattern. And when you see a pattern like that repeat across cultures that never even talk to each other, you know something deeper is going on. So today, we're going to dig into why the human race spent a millennium and a half treating interest like poison, and why, eventually, almost everyone quietly changed their mind. Let's start in ancient Greece, because this is where the West got its first real philosophical argument against interest. Aristotle looked at money and asked a simple question: what is money actually for? His answer: money is a tool for exchange. You use it to trade a chicken for shoes or shoes for wheat. That's it. That's its entire job. But interest, Aristotle said, is money creating more money without any goods or labor involved. No chicken changed hands, no shoes got made. The money just multiplied, sitting there. He called this unnatural. His actual term was tokos, the Greek word for interest, which literally translates to offspring. Money giving birth to more money. And to Aristotle, that was money doing something it was never designed to do. This idea that money is sterile, that it shouldn't be able to reproduce itself, became the philosophical seed for almost every religious ban on interest that came after it. Now let's go to the Hebrew Bible, because this is one of the oldest written bans on interest we have on record. In the book of Exodus and again in Deuteronomy, the rule is laid out clearly. If you lend money to a fellow Israelite who is poor, you shall not act as a creditor to him, you shall not charge him interest. The Hebrew word used here is neshesh, and it also carries the meaning of a bite, like something is literally biting into the borrower's wealth while they're not looking. But here's the detail most people miss. This rule only applied within the community. Lending to a fellow Israelite, no interest. Lending to a foreigner outside the community, that was allowed. Why the difference? Because the ban wasn't really about economics. It was about protecting your own people from predatory debt. In a small agricultural society, one bad harvest could push a family into a debt spiral they'd never escape. The interest ban was a survival mechanism for the community, a firewall against permanent poverty. Christianity took the concept and cranked up the intensity dramatically. Early on, church leaders pointed to a line from the Gospel of Luke, often translated as lend expecting nothing in return, and used it to argue that any lending among believers should be an act of charity, not profit. By the Middle Ages, this had escalated into full church law. The Third Lateran Council in 1179 declared that anyone charging interest, called a usurer, could be denied a Christian burial. Later councils went further. Usurers could be excommunicated entirely, cut off from the church, from society, from salvation itself in the eyes of the faithful. Dante, in the Divine Comedy, placed usurers in the seventh circle of hell, the same circle reserved for those who commit violence. Not fraud, violence. That's how seriously medieval Christian society treated the act of charging interest. And this created a massive economic problem, because medieval Europe still desperately needed credit to function, for trade, for building, for war. So, who filled that gap? This is actually where a lot of ugly anti Semitic stereotypes got their start. Because Jewish communities, often legally barred from owning land or joining trade guilds, were pushed into money lending as one of the only professions available to them. Christians weren't allowed to lend at interest to other Christians, so Jewish lenders became the financial backbone of medieval Europe, whether the rest of society wanted to admit it or not. Now let's talk about Islam, because this is where the ban became arguably the most systematic and enduring of all three traditions, and it's still fully active today. The Quran directly addresses this in Surah Al Baqarah, where it states that those who consume riba stand like someone driven mad by the touch of Satan. And it draws a sharp distinction between trade, which is permitted, and riba, which is forbidden. Riba isn't just interest in the narrow sense, it covers any guaranteed, unearned increase on a loan. The core logic mirrors Aristotle's almost exactly, even though these traditions had zero contact with each other. Money should not generate more money just by sitting there. Wealth has to come from real trade, real risk, real labor. This is precisely why Islamic finance developed entirely parallel financial tools instead of just quietly ignoring the rule. Structures like mudaraba, where profit and loss get shared instead of a fixed interest rate, or murabaha, where a bank literally buys an asset and resells it to you at a transparent markup instead of loaning you cash with interest attached. And unlike Christianity and Judaism, this ban never got quietly phased out. It's still followed by well over a billion people today, and it's created a global Islamic finance industry worth trillions of dollars. One that runs in parallel to conventional interest based banking right now in 2026. So, if the ban was this universal, this severe, what actually broke it? Two words: Renaissance banking. By the 1400s and 1500s, trade across Europe had exploded. Merchants needed capital, kings needed loans to fund wars, and theologians started getting creative with loopholes. One of the biggest was something called damnum emergens, emerging loss. The idea was, if a lender misses out on a business opportunity because his money is tied up in a loan, he should be compensated for that lost opportunity. That compensation started looking suspiciously identical to interest, just with a different name stamped on it. Then came John Calvin in the 1500s, who did something huge for the Christian world. He argued directly that Old Testament restrictions on interest were tied to the specific economic context of ancient Israel, not a universal moral law for all time. Moderate interest, in his view, was compatible with commerce and could be handled with fairness. That one theological shift cracked the dam. Protestant countries in Northern Europe, the Netherlands, England, became the first to fully normalize interest based banking. And that's not a coincidence either. Those exact countries went on to build the first modern stock exchanges and become the financial capitals of the early modern world. So here's where we land. For 1,500 years, from ancient Athens to medieval Rome to the deserts of Arabia, completely disconnected civilizations independently arrived at the same conclusion. Money making more money with no real labor or trade behind it is dangerous. Not because these people were economically primitive, but because it all directly witnessed what happens when debt spirals out of control. Families losing land, entire communities crushed under compounding interest they could never climb out of. Modern economies decided the benefits of interest, funding businesses, funding growth, funding innovation, outweighed those risks. And for the most part, that bet paid off. But over a billion people today still live under a financial system that says no, the ancients were onto something. And that debate between risk sharing and interest based lending isn't some dusty historical footnote. It's a live financial system operating in parallel with conventional banking right now, today, worth trillions of dollars. So, next time your bank statement shows an interest charge like it's the most normal thing in the world, remember, for the vast majority of human history, that same transaction could have gotten you thrown out of your church, your synagogue, your mosque, or your entire society. If you found this as wild as I did, hit subscribe because next time we're breaking down a myth that's even older than money itself.